Hey folks, Malforian here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be covering Dev Diary 138 Persian Delights for Crusader Kings 3. This is going to cover a lot of the flavour and a few new mechanics as well that are coming as part of the Legacy of Persia DLC. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, hit that like button. If you're new here, I cover all the latest Crusader Kings news. We do Dev Diary coverage, patch notes, so if you do enjoy your time, hit that subscribe button. But anyway, we're going to get straight into it. So the first thing here is about historical flavour, the changes they're making basically in the Persian area of the map, and how it's going to make it a little bit less annoying to play here, and also obviously some cool new additions coming as well. One way to significantly improve the state of the game in a given start date, not a new start date, no, I'm going to poke the bear there right at the beginning, is to look into the unresolved issues that were ongoing at a specific location at this time. To a large degree, this was the thinking behind the struggle system getting added to this DLC, and as they say, as described in the new 867 bookmark start, there is a struggle called the Iranian Intermezzo, and that is how they're achieving, showing how it was a very unstable place in this time frame, and you can work through that struggle to see how it plays out in your campaign. But the struggle alone cannot cover everything that was important for a ruler in medieval Iran in 867 or 1066. So they've taken the opportunity to do more research in the starting situation for both starts, adding new rulers, dynasties, rivalries, as well as less politically influential characters such as scholars or artists active in the time periods. Existing family trees have also been significantly expanded in many cases and should now make use of a new set of coat of arms using Iranian and Islamic elements. So that's pretty cool, getting some new art basically for coat of arms, which makes sense. A lot of them currently obviously are pretty generic in this area, but new art elements are always good to see in the game, so we'll see what they're like once we're in the game itself. Additionally, there's been a general go-over of the cultural and religious setup of the entire region, with adjustments here and there aiming to better reflect the political realities of the time. Additionally, there has been a general go-over of the cultural and religious setup of the entire region, with adjustments here and there to better reflect the political realities of the time frames. And obviously the first one here is the religious map for 867, I believe. Yes, it is. A couple of changes here and there, and they're going to go into that in the next section here. The biggest changes are to certain religious groups that were important in 9th century Iran: the Mu'tazila, the Quramites, and the Yazrika. I've done my best to pronounce them, and I'm probably going to butcher them even further in the next part, but do go along with it. The rebellious egalitarian Quramites would be particularly suited to underdog playthroughs, though none are landed at the start, whereas the fanatic Azarika stand ready to unleash a terrifying wave of assassinations to avenge the Battle of Narawan and many slights they believe to have suffered since. Both of these faiths have been given new tenets to portray their unique worldviews. At game start in 867, there is an ongoing rebellion, which you can partake in if you want to attempt to form an Azrikan caliphate. So that's cool. So as you can see here, this is the setup for that faith. It's got Warmonger, which is always great. None of those punishing opinion modifiers for constantly being at war, especially in this area of the map. You kind of want to be at war quite often because there's a lot of land you can grab relatively quickly at the beginning, and this obviously makes it a little bit better. The Fedayeen tenet is shared by the Azriki and the Nizari and allows you to recruit and utilize fearsome assassins, fanatics devoted to slaying the unbelievers. So let's see what that's going to do. So unlocks the Master Assassin core position, so that's new. Likelihood of death or injury in battle, plus 10%. No piety loss for killing characters of a different faith through the murder scheme. Makes vengeful a virtue. Makes craven a sin. Gives you plus 2 prowess. Piety per dread, 0.01. I mean, I guess it adds up if you have a lot of dread. Controlled territory advantage, plus 5. So that's pretty cool. A unique one added. I always like it when they add these unique ones to different faiths in there. It does make it feel different when you do pick one of these religions that usually you might not do so. The rural rebellious Quramites are present in pockets all over Iran, though their great rebellions of the mid-9th century have long since been suppressed. Also featured in the screenshot is the new geographic special location of Mount Damavand, one of the multiple new special buildings in the update. Oh, so we're getting a bunch of special buildings, and I guess just special locations in this case, as part of the DLC as well. Well, in the base game, I would think this is obviously coming as part of the free DLC, because it's changing the actual map. So that's cool to see. We get some new additions as well, some buildings and things like that. The cultural map should be largely familiar, with some notable exceptions in 1066 and 867, now having differing setups in the region of Balochistan, which, as you can see, it is generally the same. As they mention, a little bit of tweaks here and there, but it's generally how it is in-game at the moment. When it comes to cultures, we have added a number of new cultural traditions, some of which add new gameplay elements, such as the Kanat building line from the Irrigation Experts cultural tradition, which replaces dryland dwellers, so it's kind of like a buffed version of that, I guess. Or the new court scholar position from the new Beacon of Learning tradition, which they did cover last week, which can be sponsored to unlock new innovations. Beacon of Learning. Children are more likely to get the pensive trait, children are less likely to get the rowdy trait. Learning education traits and the scholar trait also give cultural fascination progress. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, getting some additional cultural fascination progress is always good, because then you can obviously progress through the ages quicker, get that tech earlier and things like that. Can appoint the court scholar court position. Guardians of this culture are more likely to give better education traits to their wards, and then all Persian characters learning per level of devotion +1, monthly learning, lifestyle experience +20%. So you can really focus on learning on some characters if you're playing as Persia or anyone else who gets Beacon of Learning. A pretty nice cultural tradition to get there for sure. The Persians in particular have been given 3 new traditions to reflect all the refinement and enlightenment that made them so admired by the Arabs and Turks alike. Obviously Beacon of Learning being one of them. For the greater region covered by the update, we now also have the Jirga for the Afghan, Balok and Brahui cultures, which unlocks the tribal elective succession form, as well as new regional traditions that unlock unique men-at-arms types such as the Zupin, Pragmatic Creed Spearmen, and the Turkans Frontier Warriors. So couple of different units that we're going to get, and then also getting tribal elective succession in this area is quite a nice bonus. As we saw last week with how Unity is going to work, you can unlock better succession types through that Unity system without having to unlock tech, as it were. But it looks like even if you don't use that, you are going to be able to get tribal elective succession down here as well. They're also adding historically inspired decisions and events to the region, which aim to open up the same possibilities to rulers in our game that historical rulers of the era would have had. This also means that some particularly unlikely historical scenarios are now encouraged. For instance, the Turkic conquerors in general, and the Seljuks in particular, are more likely to show up and make a home for themselves in the Iranian plateau. And as a rising ruler in Iran, you have new ways of promoting alternate Islamic faiths in the region that are not yet present yet at game start. So you can, I guess, through some decisions, I imagine, found some versions of Islamic faiths that obviously don't exist in real life, or I guess maybe died off before this time frame or something like that you can bring back, and then you can play through. These will obviously have different tenets and things like that that aren't generally found in the area, or at least kind of splinter versions of them. And as it says here, Turkic conquerors, the Seljuks, you're going to be doing different stuff here that obviously isn't historically accurate, but that's cool. A lot of players have been leaving comments on my videos and things like that saying, when are we getting the Seljuks doing something cool? When's the Seljuk invasion going to be good? And then you're not only getting the Seljuk invasion, you're also getting this like alternate version where you can even splinter off from what happened or what could have happened and found different religions or just do crazy stuff. So that's good to see, not just like the historical accurate events and things like that, but then also these alternate history things that you can go down, very much like you can do in other places on the map, but now we're going to get it in the Persia-Iran area of the map as well. For the Seljuk arrival in the late 900s, there is a game rule to make their entrance more random or to turn it off entirely. So yeah, you can randomize the start date. I would imagine it'd be like a couple of 100 years either side. I can't imagine it delays it to like, 1400 or something crazy. Or as it says, you can just turn it off entirely. If you just don't want the Seljuks to arrive, just turn it off and you don't have to deal with it, which is good. As we've said recently, where they've been talking about game rules, the more of these they put in, the more you can specialize your campaigns and play the game how you want to, which is never a bad thing. Last but not least is the chaotic setup in 867 is now further improved by an early event chain about the Zanj Rebellion, which should add even more uncertainty and dynamism to an already quite open starting situation. Yeah, this area of the map usually is so chaotic and crazy already. It sounds like it's going to get even more crazy. We might get even more splintering, or I guess maybe we'll see more unification. When the game first came out, this area of the map usually stayed quite unified, and then as we've had more DLC, I find this area splinters like so often into smaller realms that get gobbled up quite easily. So again, these different decisions and things like that should spice up this area of the map even further. So it's going to make for some really good campaigns in this area, I would think. But with that being said, that's cultures and religions and a brief overview of the changes. Obviously, there's going to be far more than this, but that's kind of the brief overview. And then we're getting on to the next new thing, which is going to be Viziers, which I wasn't expecting at all, but we're getting a new type of basically court position in a way. This works very much like a region, but it is separate from Regency. Even though it seems to use the same systems as regions, this is actually a different system from what I've seen. So a new type of diarchy is coming in Legacy of Persia. Viziers were historically many things. They were powerful private landholders, vital linchpins of the civil service, some of the most corrupt people in the world, and extravagantly dramatic party hosts. That is a wide split of different things they did. So you got here Hassan, the Order of the Realm Tusi. He's a vizier to the Sultan here, and they're going to cover exactly how this is going to work. Mechanically, viziers may be appointed by Duke tier or higher clan government characters, so it is limited to those specific characters when you're playing them. Whilst incumbent, they grant you extra tax jurisdictions, scaled with their stewardships. This is how you can get even more tax jurisdictions than you can through the usual mechanics, and add a portion of their own tax collector aptitude directly to all your other tax collectors. Oh, so having one of these basically buffs all your standard tax collectors as well. So he's like making them better at their jobs because he's so good. Providing a powerful direct modifier on how much gold you get per month. So yeah, you're going to want to get one of these viziers and you're going to want to make sure they're really good at the job as well. How large a modifier they get is basically scaled with how heavily the scales of power are swung towards them, very much like the Regency system. So a more empowered vizier offers both benefits and drawbacks to their liege. So very much like the Unity system, there's bonuses for having it in one direction and then in another direction. So there's not always like a good way to have one. Both kind of swings of the pendulum are good in their own ways and bad in their own ways, which is good. I like this. I like how they've thought about not just having a good vizier and a bad one. If they're too powerful, you get bonuses in one way. If they're not powerful, you get bonuses in another way. So it's kind of a decision for yourself which one to go down, or if you're just playing it a bit more roleplay, I guess, just kind of rolling with which one you get and amending how you're going to play based on what your vizier is. So scales of power level 4. Power sharing may be ended without negative modifiers by granting the Dayak at least a duchy. Oh, interesting. So you can give them land and then they stop power sharing. Tax collectors gain 40% of the Dayak's aptitude as a bonus to their own aptitude. Liege pays token prestige on mundane actions. So, I mean, is this good? I'm not sure because we can't see what the other scales are, but getting 40% bonus on top of potentially their already high aptitude for your tax collectors means I guess you're going to be making a lot of money if you've got really good tax collectors, a really good vizier. You're going to be rolling in cash, I think. Unlike regents, being a vizier isn't a prestigious position for a noble. You are, after all, merely a civil servant. And what's worse, one with actual work to do. Rather than a regent who sometimes is just chilling, not doing anything. As a vizier, you're actually doing something, which is annoying. Instead, landless courtiers and minor barons from your face-dominant gender compete for the post. Having a vizier in your pocket is still desirable, though. So prospective viziers at court will politic behind the scenes, gaining friendships and rivals with other prospective candidates, their liege's spouses, and their liege's stay-at-home adult children. You're going to have them coming up to you and saying, like, hey, can I be your vizier? This vizier that you've already got is doing this bad thing. It'd be much better if I'm in charge. So we'll see how annoying that gets. But it's cool to see there is kind of some background mechanics going on, and it's not just pick somebody and they're always in charge. These relations, in turn, directly contribute to a vizier's succession score, so a candidate who's friends with the current vizier will see themselves climb the ranking, whereas one who's made an enemy of their liege's spouse will see their score fall. For the same reason, prospective viziers will often learn their liege's language, seeking to further their prospects for promotion. So basically, all these different modifiers to make sure they're the highest succession score, most likely to be chosen. I wonder if you can choose other ones. I imagine you can. I imagine it works a little bit like Succession, where if you have the ability to, you can choose your successor, and if it isn't the expected successor, all the relevant people get annoyed with you that you're not picking the person it should be, you're picking who you want it to be. I imagine there is some kind of system like that in here, where you should choose the kind of expected vizier. As civil servants, viziers don't have access to quite as many powers as regents. Predominantly, they'll embezzle and try to give negative county modifiers to vassals in exchange for gold, though a complacent liege will let the scales creep too far towards their supposedly loyal vizier, will find they are still capable of launching coups. We're going to get viziers taking over countries by the looks of it. Viziers are also useful in the newish confidant council position, which allows you to substitute them in instead of your spouse for spousal council tasks. Oh, okay, so if you have a bad spouse, I guess you can replace them with your vizier for that position, which is kind of interesting. If you have a bad spouse from an alliance, maybe last minute you had to make an alliance to survive, it wasn't the perfect person to marry, they've got terrible stats, you can actually use your vizier instead of them for that council position. Kind of interesting how that's going to work. Though such functionaries can be fired at any time, removing them regardless of the status or their scale of power. A vizier with high swing is one who's enmeshed themselves thoroughly and who cannot be removed completely without consequence. Above a certain scale, firing your vizier will give you a severe negative economic modifier that harms your monthly income And as you can see from the screenshot there, civil service and chaos, you lose 8% of your income per 10% of the scales of power. So if they're at 100% swing, you're going to lose 80% of your income when you fire them. It doesn't say how long this modifier lasts, I don't believe. So I guess it runs down like monthly, as most things do. But yeah, if you've got a powerful Vizier who's giving you a lot of bonuses, but for whatever reason you're wanting to remove them, you're going to have to think twice, or you're going to have a big stockpile of money, because it's going to cause you some real problems if you remove them without thinking about it. You're not going to want to be doing that unless you really need to. An easier way to remove civil servants is to kick them upstairs, giving your Vizier a county, or if the scales are really swinging in their favour, a duchy, as I mentioned previously. Will also end the Vizierate, this time without any economic fallout. Everyone loves a promotion after all. So yeah, true, if you don't want to kick them out, just give them a county, which to be honest is relatively easy. I guess even, funnily enough, early on, where due to the succession, unless you've got that high unity to get the good succession modes, you're going to lose those counties anyway to a member of your family. So you could just give this out, like, oh, here's a county, or if you're especially powerful, here's a duchy, which you won't want to do. But I guess if you're desperate to get rid of someone, I think I'd rather take the loss of land rather than potentially minus 80% income. Again, depends how much money you've got, how long this debuff lasts. It is good, again, to see that they've given you different ways to do things. You know, you can fire them. I guess potentially you could just kill them through a murder scheme or something, or you can obviously give them some land and get out of it that way. Finally, you may recall that Viziers were legendarily corrupt, though not always strictly true. This was generally the case. You know, tar them with a wide brush there. They were all just corrupt, I guess. And this was actually a feature of the position rather than a bug. Kind of off topic, I really hate that phrase, but there we go. The role of the corrupt Vizier was to run the realm's finances, and it was generally understood that they would enrich themselves in the process. It was fairly common for them to pay significant bribes straight to their liege to get the position, that and to capture and audit the last Vizier for undeclared revenue. So, okay, historically, they used to bribe themselves into the position, and then also like, hey, you were in charge before me. Oh, look at that. You suddenly owe a lot of tax, and I'll be taking that. Thank you very much. I guess they're kind of playing into that a little bit with this content. The advantage to this for the liege was that when they needed money in a pinch, rather than having to collect a special tax from the realm as a whole, force powerful vassals and governors to cough up more cash, or individually audit every petty tax collector, there was one person in the realm who could generally guarantee not only to have money, but have more money than they should have. Minimal overhead, maximum convenience, at least for the liege. So, do you know, as I was reading that, I was thinking, why would they let this happen? But this is why. For them, it was like, okay, you're going to do dodgy stuff, you're going to take money you shouldn't have, and I'm going to be kind of fine with that, but when I need money, I'm coming to you, and you're going to give me that money. So that was kind of like the quid pro quo of the agreement there of, you can be suspiciously vague about how much money you've got and how you're getting it, but at the end of the day, if I need some gold, you're giving it to me and not these other people. So I guess that kind of worked for the most part. In game, we represent this through your Vizier's income and extravagance modifiers. They receive an income from positional corruption proportional to your own income. This doesn't count towards the embezzlement secret, as it's technically part of their role. So yeah, it's not going to count towards these secrets, because although it is embezzlement, it's like official embezzlement. You know it's going on, but you kind of agree to it. Every so often, they'll spend this money on character modifiers for treasure, activities, properties, or charity. Once they have one modifier of each type, they'll begin again, spending more money on more expensive extra types of each modifier, up to 4 tiers. So, okay, so that's what they're going to do with all this money they've got. They're basically going to buy these buffs, and as you can see, notable properties, and this gives them +1 stewardship and +1 learning. And then remarkable endowments. This character personally funds some of the most famous scholars, and this gives them 0.2 piety a month. Lieges can then mulct their Viziers via interaction, fining them for their excesses. I had to look up what mulct meant. I've never seen that word before, and I probably pronounced it terribly. It just means tax. It's a different word for it, basically. This deletes a rank of the Vizier's extravagance modifiers, liquidating them and transferring the gold to the ruler that increases with the tier and number of modifiers liquidated. Oh, so they can build up these different modifiers, but you, through interaction, can basically cut them down and transfer a nice portion of gold to yourself. So a way to get quick money, as they mentioned above. I guess that's how that interaction is going to work in game. Naturally, Viziers aren't generally too happy with this, even if the process further enmeshes them as the most important state official, but there's not much they can do about it other than rebuild their losses, which naturally makes them more attractive to mulct again down the line. So yeah, you can build up your money, then I'm just going to take it again when you've built it up. So thank you very much. So here we go. This is the decision. Your scales of power swings 10 towards the other person. He pays you 140 gold, so a decent amount. Obviously, this will change as the game progresses and depending on what modifiers he's got. All remarkable extravagance modifiers are removed, and he's got 2 of them. He loses 30 opinion of you because you took his coin, which is a good reason. And then perfunctory taxes, tithe personal luxuries, levy back fees, blanket expenditure tariffs, and aggressive auditing. I guess these are just different ones that probably change this modifier in the middle here, I would think, is how that works with these different ones. They've included about 160 different modifier descriptions for what Viziers are spending their money on, of which about half of them are historically attested, and another quarter reasonably probable, and the remaining quarter is them trying to keep up with the lavish standards of extravagance set by history's actual Vizirites. These do vary Vizier by Vizier, so you should see your Viziers purchasing extravagance modifiers relevant to their traits and interests. Oh, so I guess depending on what traits they have, they're going to pick different ones. So I guess if they're very pious, I guess they'll do more charity stuff. They've got high stewardship, they do the buildings. It isn't just a set one or randomized. It is looking like these different modifiers are going to be based on what your Vizier actually is. But that is it. That is the dev diary for this week. A little bit longer than I thought it was going to be, but a lot of interesting information here. Basically, the cultures and religion changes, the additions, different things like that. Obviously, they also mentioned some decisions and some different options like that, but didn't really go into them. I hope we do get a dev diary on them before launch, kind of showing us a couple of these different decisions that you can do that aren't currently in the game. This Vizier system, which from what I've seen is separate to a region, although it is using similar mechanics, I think you can have a region and a Vizier. Someone can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I believe you can have both. So you can have your region and then you have your Vizier, who's more kind of like your second in charge of your realm for money and things like that. I wonder if the Vizier is part of the paid DLC. It doesn't actually say here whether it is, but I wonder whether it's part of the paid content, because it is something that if you didn't have, it isn't game breaking, but it is like a nice additional role and another tier of mechanics and flavor into the realms down here, into these clan governments. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if this is paid or not. It could go either way. I hope it is part of the free DLC, the free patch that comes out at the same time, but I could see it being part of the actual DLC itself. So we'll obviously see, unless I've missed it somewhere, but I don't think it mentioned whether it was or not. But anyway, that is it for the dev diary this week. It doesn't say what they're covering next week, but I imagine we are going to get another dev diary next week on something. We'll see obviously what that is, and then we'll probably get like an achievements list or something like that. And then it won't be too long before the actual DLC's out, will it, to be honest? So we won't be waiting long ourselves anyway. But anyway, leave a like if you've enjoyed today's video. If you're new here and you've managed to get to this point, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You've obviously enjoyed your time. I cover all the dev diaries, news, discussion videos, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video. So if that's your kind of thing, hit subscribe, but we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you in the next one.